Welcome to the Mind Body Podcast, your rebellious podcast about a strong body, calm mind, healing, and fully living. I'm your host, Maria Angelova, creator of the Angelova Method, an integrative approach to mind and body connection. The Angelova Method redefines your success equation to include a healthy body and a healthy mind. Hi, Rebels. Welcome to the Mind Body Podcast, your rebellious podcast with me, your host, Maria, where it is all about a strong body, calm mind, healing, and fully living. And your treat today, joining us from southern France, is Ileana Rontea. Hello, Ileana.
Hello, Maria. How are you? Such a pleasure to be here.
Yes, thank you for saying yes to being here. Ileana is an empowerment coach. She works with women. And I am so excited to talk to you because I consistently see so many opportunities for, I would say, not only women, but for us as humans to grow. And I would love to get your perspective in light of what you do, but also you work with Europeans. I work with a lot of Americans, and it will be really cool to hear how, if there are cultural differences, what those are, and how you're approaching that. But before that, dive into that, Ileana, let's get to know who you are. So give us three words and a little bit of a story behind each word to who Ileana is.
Okay, well, let's see. I'd say adventurous. So I've lived in 13 countries and counting. Okay. The other one, I would say compassionate. So I have a really huge heart, which is why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, because I really want to help others, as you say, grow and develop. And the last one, spiritual.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm very interested in things like meditations and all sorts of different other gifts that some people have that I found very cool.
I will tell you one of the most unexpected parts of my personal journey, as I really didn't expect that this is going to be a personal journey when almost 8 years ago I quit my corporate job and decided to become an entrepreneur. And sure enough, life had a lot of lessons for me. And the one piece I didn't expect is how much closer this brings you to spirituality. And it's beautiful to see how people's journey doesn't go with intent to that, and I don't lead with that, but how the natural progression of things leads us to trusting and believing and having faith and trust in higher powers.
Yes, because I think when you're living from your authentic self, you automatically connect with your soul, and then you start to feel very differently and you embody different things in your life.
Yeah, it's a very, very different and cool experience. One, I had no idea that even existed. And I had no idea how much different life could be when you live from that standpoint versus the standpoint of ego and push and have to and shoot and so forth.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, absolutely. I totally agree.
And speaking of that, actually, I'm going to read a quote that you had shared when we had done our Authority magazine interview. And I absolutely loved it. I had never heard that before. And I think this is a great leadway into our conversation. So this is
Sure.
the quote. Come to the edge, he said. They said, we are afraid. Come to the edge, he said. They came. He pushed them and they flew. Oh, that is
My
so
favorite
beautiful.
quote.
Yes, I love it. And I think it is so empowering. And I think once you have been pushed or you have pushed yourself and you realize that you have wings to fly, life is such a different experience.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. What are some of the things that you see in your empowerment business working with women? What are some of the common things that holds people back from experiencing life the way that they could?
This is a very good question, and I do see a lot of patterns. So definitely criticism, self-criticism is a big one. So there's a huge fear, and this is about coming to the edge, right? Because what'll happen is I'll fall, but what if you could fly? So it's having the courage to really kind of take some risks. So some of the risks that people are afraid to take, particularly women, is having their voice heard, is sounding ridiculous or being rejected or being judged as stupid, or why are you bringing this up? Or instead of thinking, I have something valuable to offer, and there's no reason why it would be perceived any other way. One of the other things is perfectionism. So unless I have everything perfect, I'm not going to put an idea forward. Unless I have 100% of the criteria in the job requirement, I'm not going to apply for it. You know, men apply when they have 60%.
Men
So
apply when they have 10%.
or whatever, right? They have so much less fear than we do. So these are some of the things that we work with, and we say, it doesn't have to be this way, you know, just like spread your wings a little bit and see, you know, see what will happen. Take some small calculated risks and then build on that. And instead of holding yourself back and judging yourself as not good enough and imperfect, just try for personal best. So this is the idea we work with, because we are big believers in self-actualization. You know, the Carl Jung's ideas about how every human wants to self-actualize. So really living up to your potential, and we see it as, you know, this taking flight.
Yeah. It is very interesting that you bring up fear, because fear is what holds all of us back, right? What if? And I love that you brought up that what if it does work out? Because we usually think the scenario of what if I fail, but we don't think what if I make it?
Exactly.
And the fear of judgment, I would say for women, I see that a lot. And also the fear to also own our decisions and to say, this is what I want. And because I want this, this is okay. Um, I just did a video on the topic of seeking permission. Like, as adult women, I hear it so often. I'll be curious to hear if you hear that. I need to ask my husband. I need to ask my boss. I need to ask this. I need to ask that. And it's like, do you want this? Is this in alignment with you? Why do you need to ask somebody? And I think that has to do with the us not feeling confident into our own abilities. And it's scary to make a decision that, you know, I say that there is no failure. I say there is only learning opportunities.
Exactly.
And
We do the same. We teach exactly the same thing. And one of the reasons I think women are so reluctant to step forward is because we're socialized to not put ourselves out there, to allow the men in our lives to actually take charge. This is a very old patriarchal idea. I recently had a conversation with an Italian woman when I was visiting Italy, and I was telling her what I do. And, you know, she looked at me and she said, you know, it's only speaking to you now that I realize I always held myself back because I didn't want to outshine my father or my brother.
Oh, wow.
Right? How many women do that? And this is very unconscious. So it's such a conscious decision that I'm afraid to take an action without checking in, but it's because we are socialized. So part of the work we do with women is bringing these kinds of beliefs into awareness and holding them up for scrutiny and saying, is this really how we should be thinking? I mean, you're an adult person, right? Do you really need, as you say, permission or validation from someone else when you have some desire, and really, especially something that's very important to you, instead of just taking action on it, but always having to check in with some other authority? So we are socialized to really pay attention to authority, to go by the rules, which is why we don't apply for those jobs, right? Because the rule says you should have 100%. So yeah, so these are some of the taboos, I would say, unconscious taboos that really do need to be broken.
And I really like that you brought up the topic of awareness, because as I always tell my clients, change starts with awareness. Until you're aware of what's off in your body or on your mind or emotionally, you can't really tackle it. But you also brought up another excellent point, which I think applies actually to everybody, men and women. And that is the point of when we have self-sabotaging patterns that have to do with our success. And I would tell you, this happened to me years ago. I was talking to a coach, and when we kept digging and digging and digging and digging, she said, what is so scary about success? And first I was like, what? Like, what kind of question is that, right? But when you start digging into that question, and the thing that showed up for me is, who is not going to be there when I succeed? And I think to the example that you brought up with your Italian client, Oh, what is my family going to think if I do better than my brother or my father? Or what if I live a better lifestyle than my family used to live, right? What if I have
Exactly.
things that my family didn't have? And then you hear the judgments of family members. Oh, she's traveling the world. Oh, she's doing this, she's doing that, right? It's a judgment.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, the only thing I think that's missing there is that awareness of like, wow, I'm holding myself back because of these reasons. And to your point, it is
Absolutely.
conscious. It's not something that we intentionally do. It just happens based on those limiting beliefs.
And this programming indoctrination we talked about, it runs really deep. A lot of women do things, big things in their lives because they think that's how they need to be. They'll get married and have children when they really don't want to do that. They want to write books and explore the world. And so when human beings do that to themselves, there's an ache inside, there's a pain inside that actually never gets healed because you're actually living against how you should be. I have friends who have chosen the other path. They don't have children, they were never married, and they're extremely happy because that's what their inner being is calling them to do. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay, about being rebellious, right? It's
Yeah.
okay to live like that. Not everyone has to live in exactly the same way.
I'll give you a very prominent example. And this is a true story. I got a call from a friend. She was crying. I said, "What's wrong?" And she goes, "I just got offered the CEO position." So, as you can imagine, I'm thinking, why would getting an offer to be a CEO a reason to cry?
Yeah.
And she said, because you know what? I need to get married and I need to have kids and I need to do this and I need to do that. And my biological clock is ticking and blah, 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 blah. And I paused and I said, well, do you want to get married and have kids? And she goes, no. And she was like, she didn't even have to think about it. And I just thought to myself, like, wow, let's pause here and let's talk. So why is this making you feel guilty when you don't even want that lifestyle of family
Yeah.
life? And to your point, we are so conditioned to have to live in a certain way in a box versus going after what we want.
And some cultures, in some cultures, it's so difficult to break out of the mold. So difficult because there are huge repercussions.
Yeah.
And some people who don't live according to how they're, taught to, end up losing very important relationships in their lives, or constantly getting pushed and constantly being challenged because of the choices that they have made. So it's not an easy road, and I'm not saying it is. What I'm saying is that if you do not take the road that your inner being is urging you to take, there will be such deep regret and such pain, and others may also suffer.
Yeah.
So, obviously, deeply personal decision, but become aware of who you are and what your heart is drawing you to do, because that's really the only path that's going to give you joy and fulfillment in life. That's what we believe.
I think what's really important, Ilana, there is you brought up go after what you want and connect to your own heart. I would love to hear your opinion. I think so frequently we are so disconnected from what we want and from our heart because we are running so fast on that hamster wheel that there's no chance to tune into the heart and what I want. What is your thought on that?
Absolutely. Our whole society is built just on being robotic. you
Mhm.
know we're supposed to go to school, we have to get good grades, we go to university, we get a good job, we get married, we have children, we buy a house, we buy a car. I mean, it's like boom, 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 and before you know it, you're like in your 60s and 70s, and you look back and go, what happened to my life, my dreams, what I wanted to really do, how did this happen? And it's again that self-awareness, and stopping once in a while and going, checking in and saying, okay, I'm on this road, right? I'm going really fast. Is this what I really want? And if it's not, then when do I alter the course of my life? Because anybody can alter the course of their life at any time. Sometimes it's more difficult and complex than other times, but becoming aware of this is so, so important because, yeah, otherwise, what happens? We just get to the ends of our lives, and they've done studies with people at the end of life,
Mhm.
and what the regrets are so profound. It's not doing the things that they love and not spending enough time with those people that they love.
I love, yeah. And 2 points pop to mind, Ilana, is one is you brought it up, when we live the life of shoots instead of the life that we want. I call that living in misalignment. And you mentioned it brings pain, and I see in my business, I see that pain. I see people who are starting to have physical pain. They are starting to have health conditions, which are, I don't know if you're familiar with some of the work of like Louise Hay, Christina Bierland, who talk about the
Of course,
importance of emotional health onto
of
and
course.
the correlation of disease.
Yeah.
And we start seeing the long-term implications of life that's lived out of alignment. Um, and then what was the second thought? And the other thing is you said, when do I change courses? And I immediately thought now. And I think
Absolutely.
I was talking to a colleague last week, and um, we were talking about how pretty much everybody has a desire to change their life, but how few actually take action to do something about it. They just
Yeah.
every day go in and go in, oh, I don't like my life. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, I feel bad. But
But the fear of changing things, right? The fear of change is huge. And this
yeah,
is what holds most people back because it's a step off the cliff into the unknown.
yeah,
And yet, if you think about it, humanity has only moved forward because some people took some risks and came up with different ideas and did different things that weren't done before. Society has evolved. We don't live the same way they did in ancient times. When, if you had a child that was born that had a problem, they were killed. I mean, that was it. There was no conversation.
mhm,
So we have evolved in certain ways and hugely. We have a lot more compassion. We take care of people who have greater needs, who are physically unable to take care of themselves. I mean, everything has expanded. But when it comes to our own personal lives and how we live them, there's this desire and conditioning to be a good little soldier.
yeah.
And this is not the path to take if you want to be in authenticity and joy.
Yeah. And I think it's also very important, to think about, okay, what happens if I fail, right? But then also, what happens if you don't try to break the cycle of this robotic life and that
If you don't
repetition?
try, nothing happens.
Yeah. And then you brought it up, the research studies that show at the end of life, people have regrets, big time regrets of not having even tried. I'll tell you, when I quit my job, it was scary, it was horrifying. I thought to myself, you know what? Worst case scenario, I'm going to go back, right?
Yeah,
If I
yeah.
have to. And then I realized, you know what? If I give myself that option, it doesn't work. Like just scratch that as an option and just keep moving forward.
Yes, when I started to work on cruise ships, I was 41, which is much older than most people are. And I thought, oh my God, what am I doing? What if this doesn't work? So I thought, well, yes, I can always go back to my life at some point, but I have to give myself a certain amount of time to get used to all the changes because
Yeah.
you're talking about a huge, enormous change, and there's so much to learn and there's so much to grow. So I gave myself the time, and eventually it was okay.
Yeah.
But yes, it's
It
very
was,
it's very scary when you first start, like everything is. But then, when you were an infant and you took your first step, when you were a toddler, that was pretty scary too. And toddlers don't give up.
yeah. And most toddlers walk,
Right?
right?
Exactly. And
Don't
they'll
forget.
apparently they fall 200 times on average before they're able to actually walk. And they don't give up. So
Yeah.
good for thought.
Well, you know what? They don't have the societal conditioning that we have as we grow up, and
Exactly.
that is how we get stuck, which can be a whole other episode. Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
So, Ilana, what is one piece of advice you give to somebody, especially from the standpoint? I love the word empowerment because I do think it's a little bit overused, but if you truly step into your worth and truly step into who you are, I think it's such a game changer. What is the one advice to tell to somebody who is maybe on that edge, They're like, oh, I want to take that step, but oh, that fear is stopping me.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things. If you're not sure which way to go, it always helps to have someone helping you in this journey. Someone to provide some guidance, some coaching, some advice, who has walked a similar path and who can relate and has some different tools and practices that can help. And the
Mhm.
biggest thing is, the world really needs your authenticity because every single person has something very valuable to add to the world. So when you live in that place and when you give of yourself from that place, it changes absolutely. As you know, it's a total game changer. And
Yeah.
you end up living from this joyous and fulfilling place because every day is like a gift if we live it like that. Of course, no life is perfect, but there's an when you're in alignment, as exactly as you said, things flow differently and things feel differently, and you feel that empowered state for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. What is your definition of rebellious, Ilana?
Well, I mean, for me, it really was not living conventionally and being controlled by things I don't agree with. So I would always look at things and say to myself, does that make sense to me? Is that how I want to live? Is that the path to take? And if the answer was no, or I wasn't sure, I wasn't just going to go with it. And that's because for me, I always listen to my inner guidance. Had I had this ability to listen to my inner self since I was young. And I knew certain things for sure, and I followed them despite the fact that I had some very strong pushback.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it also taught me resilience and inner strength that I didn't back down. And I knew which path was mine to take. Yeah.
The one thing that comes to mind is as you're talking, Ilana, is if you feel like you want to do something and it truly feels right to you, right? Not to your husband, your mom, your dad, your whoever, but to you, give yourself a chance. Give yourself a chance to say, you know what, I don't know how, but I want this and I will go after it. Because so
I agree.
frequently I hear people, I want this, oh well, but I can't. And then that's it. There is not even the opportunity to explore of how can I make this happen. Because you know what? The game changers are I always say action is the only thing that will change your life. So if you always have where I can't, and you have the BS list of excuses that are always there in your way, that's it. That's how it's going to be, right?
And the other thing is that sometimes you take an action and it doesn't have the results you intended. But it might be a stepping stone to the next thing, which might be the stepping stone to the next thing, which might eventually get you somewhere even better than you even thought. Because once you open yourself up to that guidance and to that spirit and to your soul, things will start to come in that you may not have even been expecting.
Yes.
So yeah, I would say that coming to that edge and taking flight is essential for really self-development and self-actualization and living from that place of empowerment for sure.
Yeah. And what the scenario that you describe of things not going your way and you find yourself in a more beautiful place, I will 100% attest to that because I am an example of that. Where I am today is because things didn't work out the way I envisioned them working. And once I learned to take, okay, this is just asking me for an alternative. I didn't get the result that
Yes.
I want. What's the alternative? Life has a beautiful way of guiding you through towards your purpose and towards you being the highest version of you.
And sometimes it really helps not to have this kind of hanging on to something that you want with, like, with white knuckles,
Yeah.
but just to allow a little bit more, just to flow with it a little bit more, go a little bit more with the flow instead of hanging on for dear life. And I'm speaking from personal experience because there's many ways I have walked that didn't work out the way I thought they would, but they led me to other things, which led me to other things. And yeah, I mean,
You
it's
are.
always,
I agree with you.
yeah,
When
yeah.
we flow versus it has to be a certain way. And, like we both come from Eastern Europe. You shared that with me before. And I think our culture there is pretty strong in terms of how you should live, what the priorities are. And breaking free from that is give yourself some leeway. And it's also can be a challenge because if you're a control freak and you brought up before perfectionist, that tends to complicate things a bit, but life can
I'll
be
just
so
share with you, my mother was a judge and a lawyer. So a very strong woman. And she wanted me to also be a lawyer. And because she said you have the brains for it. And when she gave you a compliment, it was true. And I said, I appreciate that. Thank you. But that's not my path. You know, I'm about educating, helping, empowering, guiding others. That's my passion. Working with legal things that are just, you know, they don't have meaning for me.
Yeah.
So I need something more expansive. So I continued to follow that. And as I said, it led me to very different places, 13 countries, working on cruise ships, human resource management, all sorts of things. And now it's like I'm able to share all of this with others and help guide them in the workplace, which is very, really special for me. I'm so thrilled I
Working
can
for
do
you,
that.
meaningful, yeah, fulfilling. And I think that's a big
Very,
part of
very much so.
living a life. Ileana, where can people find you? Social media, website?
Yes, so empoweredwomennow.com is our website. You can find me on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and my email is hello@empoweredwomennow.com.
Excellent. Ilana, thank you so much for finding the time to be here with us today, especially considering the time difference. Rebels,
My
if you have
pleasure.
any questions, feel free to ask those. Definitely make sure that you connect with Ilana, ask any questions, take advantage of her wisdom and bright light and energy. I love that. Her adventureness, her multicultural experiences. Ilana, thank you for being with us today. And you guys, thanks for tuning in and make sure you stay rebellious. We will see you next time. Did you enjoy the conversation? Like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Want to redefine your success equation to include a healthy body and a healthy mind? Check out our website at rebellious-studio.com.